Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this Insurance Nexus webinar on how to deliver a seamless claims customer experience using innovative technology. We are very happy to welcome our presenters today, including our moderator, Eddie Longworth of JEL Consulting, a very experienced claims professional focused on claims transformation and supply chain also, Mario Rico, Chief Claims Officer at Generali, and also Jan Erik Fredriksson, Nordic Head of Digital and Business Development Claims at P&C. Idea of today is to receive some practical advice, some real experience from the members of the panel. And this is all part of the lead up to our Connected Claims Europe Summit in September in Amsterdam, 18th and 19th. If you haven't already, please do take a look at the website, insurancenexus.com/Connected Claims Europe. We are gathering European insurers and their claims teams to talk about claims customer experiences, back-end operational efficiencies, innovation and strategic leadership from the claims teams. And it's a great time to get involved in that event. But I'd like to pass over to our moderator for the session today. And also to remind you, you can submit questions through the webinar system, which we will try to incorporate into the conversation. So please do submit any questions. Eddie, I'll pass over to you.
Thanks, Graham, and thank you everybody for logging in. And again, my thanks also to Mario and Jan Erik, who we'll be hearing from very shortly. And also let me emphasize again Graham's point of please do submit your questions. This is very much around what you want to hear. You'll discover soon that our speakers have tremendous experience and expertise in the world of digital claims transformation, and so this is an opportunity for you to access their thoughts as well as to listen to what we have to say here. So my name is Eddie Longworth, and by way of a background, it's just worth saying that I've been in the claims consultancy business for 23 years, but I have to say that the last 3 years have probably been the most exciting because it's the time at which the switch from manual claims notification and settlement to the digital world has gathered speed. There's a huge amount of activity and investment in all quarters, and I'm sure many of you listening are involved in that. So that's the upside of it. The opportunity for positive change is certainly upon us, and we see a great deal of activity and monies being invested. However, my personal experience, and I know our speakers have similar experiences, that quite often there's a lot of talk and not enough action. And quite often the action that is being implemented isn't necessarily coming up with the results that people were and are anticipating. So it's not for the want of trying, and it's certainly not for the want of opportunity. But getting from where you are today to where you want to be tomorrow is proving something of a challenge for some players in the market. We've heard certainly that the world of insurtech sometimes struggles to deal with the huge insurer companies that they're wanting as clients, and equally those huge insurers companies are sometimes struggling with the insurtech innovations that are being thrust upon them almost on a daily basis. So we need to keep in mind that claims transformation and certainly delivering a seamless claims customer experience using technology is not necessarily an easy road, but it's a road that many people are on, and so I think we want to understand how we get from where we are today to where we want to be tomorrow. So I'm going to turn first to Mario. Mario is the Chief Claims Officer for Generali. He looks after all of Europe, and I think beyond that as well. And I know from previous listening to Mario at the conferences we've both attended that Mario has walked the walk, he has talked the talk, and he's made a lot of things happen at Generali. So Mario, I'd like to turn to you now, and perhaps you could give us your thoughts on just how we create that seamless claims customer experience. Mario.
Okay, thanks, Eddie, and thank you also for the invitation and the participation in this webinar. a few words about myself. I'm looking for claims within the group from the group head office perspective. So I'm responsible for steering, control, and support our different countries. So my direct experience is not on a specific country or context, but is more having the chance and the privilege to work with different chief claims officers from different countries within our group. So a few words also on the context of this webinar, because we're talking about customer experience using innovative technologies. So I think those are this webinar is touching two important aspects today. I see, first of all, is about the customer experience. It is and it remains today, I believe, one of the biggest challenges and priorities for the insurance industry, and specifically for claims, to improve the customer experience, and to build and to have a claims journey that is delighting customers. That remains, I believe, today one of the top priorities for every chief claims officer. It's not a new one, but it is for sure today the number one. The second aspect that is happening today is that we are, and I must say, I personally have the chance every day almost to get in touch to or to read or to talk to a new technology company, or a new solution that is in the market, something that could be interesting to apply in claims. And that is an amazing period, and that poses also a big challenge, which is how to bring all this into reality, because we are used probably in the past of thinking about a claims process, a claims journey, and then to work in designing and implementing, and then putting it in running it, and then measuring and controlling and understanding the performance. And that, of course, had some time to happen. And today we are seeing every day that we finish this exercise, and we see the day after that maybe there is something new or different that we could be applying and using in the work we just finished. So there is, I believe, when we talk about delivering a customer experience using technology, an issue about how we bring all this technology first, and there is also an issue of how we bring that at scale, because we have been struggling over time, I believe, in building new processes or creating new solutions. And that has engaged us a lot. But then we struggle in the steering, so increasing the adoption of these solutions, of these processes, and also working to try to steer as much claims as possible to that process or solution. But in fact, the real impact we will have when we achieve the vast majority of claims, and that's probably one topic that I wanted to touch in this webinar. The second one is about combining people and technology, because many of the technologies I see today that we get in touch in work are not sufficient, or doesn't deliver alone the impact on the claims customer experience. You need also to have the contribution of claims people, and that's where I see the biggest impact on the change, when we effectively have the people a part of this process, which is not only a technological introduction, but also a combination of these two elements, people and technology. So on the adoption side, just I take just a few more minutes, and then I hand over for Jan Erik, and then we can discuss further on this. There is maybe a need more and more to move from working to optimize or to introduce innovation or change in a piece of the process or the journey, to really redesign from the beginning to the end. And that is something that, of course, has to be done on each type of each claims journey, because we have different ones. Would be easy if we were managing just one process, but unfortunately, the complexity of claims is that we have different situations, because it depends on the different type of losses, the different also needs of customers, different types of customers. So which makes every claims journey different. Of course, not every claim is different, but we have different types of claims journeys to think and that we can redesign. The point is to not only focus on bringing one technology, one innovation, one improvement in one piece of the process, but to, without changing, of course, or rethinking the way we have been traditionally managing, but to rethink from the beginning to the end. And that is the first message I wanted to share. The second one is about how to make it happen, because of course, as I was mentioning before, it's not only about introducing a new innovation or maybe to connect to one partner. You have to have on board and part of it the people. And I must say the most successful cases I saw was when this change, this redesign came from the people that were traditionally managing the process, which is difficult to achieve, of course, because not everyone is comfortable to change, especially if the process is successful, if there is a history of success. But the way I saw it functioning was when the people were, there was time dedicated in engaging the people, in explaining also, or let's say even educating about technology, about what now it's capable to have, it's possible to have, and then have together a thinking phase with the people that have the biggest knowledge on that process to what can be done differently. As I said, it's I don't believe it's an easy exercise, because not everyone is ready or open or willing to make such a step. But it's where I saw the biggest impact and success. When you have the people with the biggest knowledge on the specific claims process or journey engage in the change. Second aspect in this is what kind of capabilities and technologies we need. And here I just wanted to mention two aspects, because we are talking a lot about solutions, but I think there are two fundamental technological capabilities that we must really master. One is in the way we communicate and interact with customers. And again, this is maybe it's something obvious, but to really do it in a good way, in a proactive way, in a qualified way, in an easy and simple way, that is where I have seen at least a difference. And second, it's about having a very good workflow on which you can build your processes, build your solutions, have your people working. And most of all, which is probably the major technological capability we have to master in the future, which is about the capability to integrate with partners and providers and all sorts of new companies that are having different solutions or services that we can make available to the customers, in order to have the journey as most seamless as possible on one side for the customer, but also to make sure that everything is under control for the company. So to summarize a bit my initial thoughts in the conversation, there is one issue about how to bring to scale good solutions and new processes. The need to have an end-to-end courage to change, and not just to bring a piece into a traditional process, and the involvement of people, and finally to be to have available good technological capabilities. I would say foundational capabilities of communication, workflow, and integration. These are my first thoughts. Then I would hand over to Eddie or to Jan-Erik, and then we can maybe interact and have some more discussions.
Thank you, Mario. Just one point. It's the major one that you've raised, really. The whole problem of integrating technology with people, but also about getting people to accept, even initiate the technological changes that are going to be needed in the future. I mean, one of the gaps I've noticed as I've been wandering around is not so much resistance from those people at the coalface, but it's actually about the gap between the senior executives and the claims people, that sort of gap in the middle there, where really there's a lot of confusion as to where the business is trying to go and the effect it's going to have on people, and of course the effect it's going to have on claimants. I mean, is that gap between executive and the coalface something that you have seen and tried to overcome?
Yeah, it's definitely there is also because there is not always clarity on the goal or what is expected to be achieved. So which are the expectations from the different stakeholders? And here it's I believe where a good communication and involvement can have a big difference. I have an example of a country that wanted to introduce robotics, for example. That it was presented as an interesting opportunity, a new technology, and say, okay, let's use it. And here I have two examples that I see. One was, okay, we have a detached team of people working on robotics, so outside the claims that because they know a lot about robotics, they were thinking about where to implement and what and how to implement, and that was one approach I have seen. And then I have another one which I found very successful. It was to first, before introducing it or to start implementing in an area, it was organized a training session to some selected claims people about what is robotics and what robotics is able to do and how it works.
Right. Yeah.
And then for those people, which I'm talking about claims, claims senior people or claims experts or team leaders, or people in the more operational role, and they were asked to identify one activity or one process that the robot could help in their work. And then they came out with ideas, and then they just selected the best 4 and then implemented them. And I must say that this was an example of situation where I saw the biggest impact in the sense that, of course, the person that is daily working on the process, they know where are the biggest difficulties or opportunities. And that was an interesting case where, of course, with some investment of time in the training and explaining about the technology, but also on organizing this idea generation, has had afterwards a big impact. And of course, the level of acceptance was much higher because it was a solution that came out from them directly. So that I found a good way to overcome the resistance and involving the people.
Terrific. So a bit of a contrast there between the sort of specialist approach, just bringing in the experts and letting them do their own thing, and a more collective, cohesive approach, bringing in the claims and the technology people, and both working on the opportunities from the start. So that's a really interesting contrast and way of working. Yeah.
And if I can add, I think this is also because you also need the specialist on the technology and the specialist on the systems. I think this is also to bring another topic that it's about the teamwork, because more and more, I believe there is a need to work on teams, on cross-functional teams. And that is, again, something not always easy to achieve, because everyone is engaged in their own daily work. But that is also another recipe that more and more that there is a need to work on cross-functional teams to build and make this happen. And probably the difficulty or the challenge on cross-functional teams is that to work together, but to make sure that everyone is bringing their own knowledge while keeping their own responsibilities and accountabilities. Of course, the danger of teamwork is that there is someone that doesn't know about technology take decisions about technology, and someone that doesn't have knowledge on claims take decisions about claims. Because afterwards, the responsibility and the accountability, if the technology doesn't work, will be on the shoulders of the technology responsible. And if claims results doesn't work, the responsibility and accountability will be on the claims people. So
everybody can blame everybody else.
Yeah, but I mean, that's why it's important more and more to work on the as teams and cross-functional teams.
Terrific, thank you. So Jan-Erik, let me bring you in now, because I know that for the listeners, it's worth saying Jan-Erik is head of sort of digital and business development for the claims function for an insurer called If. If you're not familiar with If, they serve 3.7 million customers in the Nordic regions. And again, having met Jan-Erik previously, I know that he's been heavily involved in this area for a number of years now, and I'm sure has seen substantial number of changes in the way the customer experience has been developed and the best uses of technology. So I guess, Jan-Erik, my sort of question to set you off is, as it were, following on from Mario's contribution, is what have you been able to see? What have you been able to do to work from the sort of original idea getting into an actual solution, which appears to be one of the biggest stumbling blocks. We've got lots of solutions, got lots of ideas, but turning one into the other is not necessarily the best way, not necessarily the easiest thing to do. So what's your experience there, Jan-Erik?
Well, thank you, Eddie, and hello, everyone. As said, I've been working about 12 years now in If and insurance, a bit longer than that. And I must say that the last 4 or 5 years have been extremely exciting, given kind of like the different new opportunities that have risen from the kind of the technological development around us. And kind of, even if it puts a lot of pressure on us to deliver better customer experience using those innovative technologies, it's also giving an opportunity to actually really shine on the market and make a difference to the customers. So it makes at least my job very exciting. And maybe to kind of try to open up a little bit kind of what we have done, I was considering to share maybe 2 different thoughts here. Kind of, first of all, like how am I trying to figure out kind of what to do in this kind of landscape where the options seem basically endless? What to do and how to make that decision, how to prioritize things. And the second part is then, well, how to actually deliver on what we then want to deliver. So maybe those are the 2 aspects to go through here.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
So if I start with kind of like how to choose what to do, I think we've tried to adopt a little bit like a two-folded approach to this. I mean, one thing, we clearly in the past haven't had the kind of technological capabilities, as Mario was also pointing out to, that you have to understand the technologies to be able to do anything with them. And I think one of the angles on us choosing what to do has been a little bit like technology first, trying to figure out what actually could be useful for us. And I think that we have probably identified 4 of the latest technologies that we really want to understand better, kind of one being the robotics in many of the different aspects of it. I mean, talking about chatbots, speech bots, kind of desktop robotics or process robotics. So there are a lot of things there that we need to learn in order to deliver good services and tools for our claim handlers as well. The artificial intelligence, machine learning is another area which kind of go hand in hand with the robotics as well. Image recognition, and maybe lastly the Internet of Things and telematics as one very interesting area to look into. Maybe worthwhile mentioning even the big data thinking. That is maybe a slightly separate issue altogether, but still an interesting area how to be more fact-based with whatever you do and get insight from your customer base as well. But I think this technology first kind of thinking has led us to do small investments in areas like really simple use cases, not even thinking about them being scalable to start with, but just to test out in a small context how to deliver using one of those new technologies. And of course then we come back to all those things that Mario was pointed out, that you have to have cross-functional teams, you have to have the technological competence, right people who know the process and all that. So that's maybe the kind of the interesting piece, even though that doesn't necessarily bring the value you are looking for, but that helps you to then eventually deliver more value. And then the second kind of way for us to decide what to actually do is starting from concrete customer cases or the needs that we already see today. And they can be kind of like smaller things that come from a particular customer pointing out that, hey, in their feedback that this would be something great to have, and us ourselves diving into the customer journeys. And finding from there those small pockets of opportunities that you can start implementing on. And I think that kind of leads us quite nicely to this thinking, like, well, how do you then deliver when you figure out some of these opportunities? And there I would say that at least I see three different kind of steps in the process. The first one is that you actually know the customer journeys. I think that traditionally we in insurance have been very much focused on our internal processes, and I mean the digitalization era earlier on with automation and stuff, that it was very much focused on improving our internal efficiency rather than actually affecting the customer's journey in a positive way. Of course, you get the benefits there as well, but that was not maybe the main focus. And when we are talking about now the future customer experience, I think you really need to understand and dig deeper into what is the customer going through, not how our internal processes are working. And there it's of course important that you make things relevant to the customer and that there is a clear value for the customer. So for example, an internal efficiency gain from introducing a new online service is not good enough. It has to have a value to the customer as well. So they either, let's say, we reach the decision faster, we can steer the customer for getting replacements or repairs on the damaged items faster, whatever that is, but we really need to figure out what is the value to the customer in that process. And then of course, once you have identified what is the kind of like the customer journey like and what is the value that we are creating by doing something new, it's important that we also put it into a right context. I've heard a lot of discussions about, well, you want to put out an app with the possibility to do better registration, claim registration, or being able to do, let's say, car inspection after kind of to assess the damages or things like this. The app itself is not the answer because it doesn't have the right context to the customer. If you have a claim once in 3 years as a private individual, for example, then you are not going to download an app when you have hit another car on the street. Then you need immediate help, and then of course that app is no good in that there is no context for that app. So it's really important then to come back to the customer journey thinking again, to figure out, well, where is it that we actually need to add value and how do we reach the customer. So of course, if you then have an app that the customer uses frequently, let's say that could be the car app, or it could be your insurance app where you edit your insurances or pay your bills or whatever, then of course you have a context that you can put the claim functionalities in as well. But without that context, basically your services are useless. And that's something that is really, I at least feel is really important to think before you even start the development. And of course, then that means that sometimes just a plain and simple web service might be good. We just launched a while ago in Sweden a photo inspection service. So when you have a damaged car, but you still can drive it, when you make a claim registration to us, you basically are sent an SMS where you can then take pictures of your car and that's sent to the garage, and the garage makes the inspection. So you basically save 2 weeks of kind of waiting time, and you don't need to physically go to the repair shop. And again, an app would not have made the trick, but actually sending the SMS as part of the registration, that is what made customers use it, and that has been a very positive experience for us. So that was the kind of the second piece here on how to make this happen, is that you find the right context for your new services as well. And then finally, I would point out this kind of agile working mode. The traditional way, at least in our company, has been that, well, you spend a lot of time in putting out requirements on what you actually want to do, typically business working separate from the IT teams, and then basically the end result is what it is. Sometimes it's spot on, but oftentimes it's not even close to what you were thinking originally from the business angle. And that's again kind of just emphasizing Mario's earlier point about these cross-functional teams and having the right people to work with this. It is really truly important here. And of course, you should have the people involved all the way from the idea phase. For example, I have a few situations where actually having the IT developers along already in the brainstorming on trying to kind of figure out detailing the idea that was originally there, you get a lot of insight into what is possible easily, or if we do it this way, it can kind of, we get it faster out or whatever. So actually involving everybody from business to IT from the very beginning, and of course making sure that you get the customer feedback all along. So it's good to make this kind of first version that is not necessarily looking as good as you would want it to look like, but it's good enough that you can test it with a handful of customers.
I've never. Sorry, Jan Erik. I just wanted to pick up on the customer piece. I've never seen ever in all the workshops I've attended, and Mario, perhaps you could contribute here. I've never seen a customer ever, and I've never seen a customer representative, or I've never seen anyone from marketing, unless they're about marketing new policies, in which case they don't really care that much about claims. And it's just interesting that we're trying to design a customer experience, but I've never seen a customer involved in the process.
Yeah, I think this is something as well that first of all, you have to have an idea. I think that it's kind of like this Henry Ford story that, I mean, if you ask the customer what would they want now, they would say faster horses instead of the car. But and I think that so you have to go with an idea. Without an idea, it's very hard to kind of involve the customer. I have at least experienced. But then once you have that idea, the first thing, the simplest thing, for example, is that now we have built a kind of fairly broad UX community, the kind of user interface designer community, and they have a lot of good technical platforms where you create a clickable prototype which you then expose on that platform to kind of random users. They don't have to be your customers. It's typically these B2C services. I mean, anybody can basically go and test it and give their opinion on it. And I mean, using that platform is a very good way to get the kind of the initial input on whether this flies or not. And of course, then the further you go, you can launch it to a small amount of your own customers. We, for example, when we launched our first app on kind of editing insurances, for example, that we tested with our own employees being customers to us. So it's a kind of, there are many ways to do this. I mean, have a very low threshold to actually involve the customers or the general public to give you input, and then finally you broaden the scope and get more of people. And of course, along the way, you can have focus groups, invite a few in. Typically, I mean, we did on the B2B side, we made a concept, kind of like a clickable prototype, which was then usable on your own mobile, and we collected, let's say it was about 10-15 persons from 3 different companies to test it out, and just using those 10-15 persons was plenty to start building the next version on. So we should absolutely take more the customer angle into our work.
I think so. Mario, let's just stay on this focus for 1 second, because we are talking about redesigning the customer experience. I mean, what work have you or Generali been doing on making sure that we get the voice of the customer front and central in the redesign process?
Well, the customer is a very, very good point, because as Jan Erik was mentioning, everything starts with knowing the customer journey and having an idea. I also agree that we need to build and develop the ideas, and that's why you need competent people from different functions and areas. But customer here is a fundamental piece, and what we have been doing, and it's to get as much as possible from the customer feedback. We have launched 4 years ago a great NPS program, and the way it was launched, it was on a transactional. So in a way that we are able to measure the feedback on the claims touch point, and it was. And in that program allowed us to obtain a lot of feedback. So we were able to understand much better, together with our colleagues from the marketing area, what are the pain points for the customers, what are bothering and what are delighting them during the different claims journey. And what we have also been doing recently is to link that feedback more and more to operational processes, in a way that we were able to understand the differences of feedback depending on the type of process, type of journey, type of service that the customer was exposed to or went through. So that, for example, when we introduced some type of fast track process, we link that information of the claim that went through that journey or not, and able to compare what was the feedback in that process and outside, for example.
Okay. Yeah.
That was a very, let's say, it's a way that I believe it's makes it very immediate, because as feedbacks you are measuring on a daily basis, it's a real time, because in the way we have our program, that there is a mail that goes directly to the customer when you have the touch point. So you have an immediate feedback of what's going on. So you can also understand over time how it is changing and evolving, because behind, of course, you have, of course, the introduction of the new process, but you also have the way the people are delivering it, our claims people or providers. So you can see over time, even on a daily basis, how customers are reacting. And that's, I think, is it's been for us a very effective way of driving these projects. What I think is important is maybe to have more and more customers also in the idea generation or in the design, because we are, of course, asking a feedback on an existing process, and the only way to understand if the idea will work is once you implement it. So of course it's not always easy, but the NPS program for us has been very useful in having the voice of the customer in that design process in claims involved.
And that's terrific. And can I ask Mario? I mean, with your sort of broader European hat on for the moment, I mean, is there a significant difference between countries, or is it broadly similar redesign efforts that you're going through, or are there particular national priorities that you have to pay attention to?
Well, for the contexts and of course are different, but I mean the feedbacks and the pain points are the same. So we don't see differences in results between countries. Of course, what we see is that the type of answer, the type of solution required to fix the pain point or to improve the experience are different. That yes, but the pain point at the end it's cross country. I mean,
Okay.
people want fast, simple, personal, accessible. Those are the issues they raise, and they raise this everywhere. Yeah.
Okay, and so Jan Erik, that sort of brings me neatly, really, to whilst the broad behavioural aspects of customers might be the same. I mean, how do you find the difference, if any, between what customers say they're interested in and say they will do, versus what they actually do? I mean, there's been a lot of studies done in a lot of different markets, and certainly market research is based on this, that customer stated preferences and customer ideas aren't necessarily what they end up doing when you introduce a new technology. I mean, have you come across any issues like that?
Yeah, that's very typical. I would say in my experience as well. That's typically why we rather use the kind of the customer angle into kind of testing than we try to do, as I said, in an agile way. So we make a small investment to create the kind of the prototype so that we can really test how the customers would use it and would they even in the first place use it. And
right.
And I think that all these UX designers tools are extremely valuable. Then of course. You still need to take it seriously that if the customers tell you that this is how they would want to do or they have suggestions, for example, when you ask about the customer satisfaction after the process, there are a lot of good feedback from there, which then once you start developing kind of proves the point that, well, yeah, actually it's not like that how they eventually then behave. But to me it's still all valuable input, but what we need to be more fact-based than when we start developing them and make small investments, work agile, so you can actually kill the project then early on if that proves not to be the case what the customers originally said. And I think that's maybe the hardest part here, because we are so used to doing the kind of like all requirements up front, and then we start developing, and maybe the development takes a longer time, but then we have really great service at the end. But then if you have missed about the context where you put it, or you've missed about kind of how the customers really behave, then you might have put all the money there in vain.
I mean, that brings us neatly, Jan Erik, to this whole issue of agile working. But I mean, certainly, I think the experience of all three of us is that much as we love our insurance companies, they're not necessarily the most innovative and driven and fast-moving organizations, which stands very different to the entrepreneurial insurtech world and claims technology world, which is wanting to see things move very quickly. How have you, Jan Erik, how have you sort of managed to square that? I mean, you've been very focused on this concept of agile working, but actually making it happen seems to be a bit of a problem in the insurer community.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think we've tried to tackle that maybe through three different approaches. One is, like I said, that we do some of the development is like going tech first, just testing out small scale doesn't even need to be a real good business case or like a need for it, but just to test out the technology, we have this so-called if tech lab that internally tries these out. Sometimes we hook up with external providers to get the needed competence to fill in the gaps that we have internally. But that's kind of our way to build the competence that we then need and create a maybe a little bit faster moving small group of people who can start developing something from scratch with a short notice and deliver fast. Then I think the other angle is to then for those kind of bigger cases or more concrete cases to use cross-functional teams, as both Mario and myself have explained here, and have the IT, instead of kind of having one unit doing this, another doing unit taking it kind of from there, and then the third one implementing, we actually try to have that in one group, one team, and for example, we have tried to adopt these kind of product management teams in a way that where one person has a full responsibility for developing kind of from the idea to the final application in one place, and then that person just is dedicated the right type of expertise, be it then business or IT. Or the UX designers or whomever, and that team is then responsible for delivering. And I see that model at least is giving us much faster and more, making us more agile. And then I guess the third angle is then that we need to get all our managers to start a little bit more agile as well. It's not okay to make a 3-year plan on what do we want to have then and make the resource planning according to that. You need to be able to maneuver in the short term as well. And that's more the kind of maybe a mindset shift in the entire organization, which I see maybe the most difficult here, and time consuming to actually get that done. But on the other hand, I think we are all aware of the fact that the world changes quite rapidly and that we need to be able to react faster and even be more proactive to that. So we are moving that way, but takes time.
Takes time, yeah. I mean, Mario, you spoke right at the beginning about the need to have a sort of redesigned sort of blueprint almost of the full journey. I mean, do you think that's an essential precondition of the type of experimentation that Jan-Erik is doing, or can you marry the two systems, the two approaches together? How do you feel that works best?
Well, first I share all the thoughts of Jan-Erik, because the real issue now is how to implement all these ideas. Even if you have a kind of a blueprint, then the problem becomes to make it become reality and to make it happen. And I totally share the points where I also see that the recipe here is to work in teams. And that is also something that I think all functions are realizing that, because also I believe to say also some positive words towards our IT colleagues. They are also changing the way they work, because they also realize that we have to be much faster. Also because it's increasing a lot the demand for change and for new developments in the different systems, not only on claims but also in other areas, and that then this becomes also a problem. There's a lot to be done on different areas, so you must be able to manage all this. Of course, one way also to approach is to work more with providers, with specialized companies which have specific competencies and deliver specific services. But for that, we need also to be able, and that's become then the other challenge, to be able to integrate more faster and flexible, which is then probably the thing we all have to work. Because maybe you have a good provider which might not even have the technology, but is also maybe delivering a specific service connected to the technology. but then you need to integrate this easily in the process, or otherwise you cannot work disconnected, especially on claims where we need to keep everything under control. So I think that implementation is then probably the main challenge we are all face and will face, I think, even more and more, because it's increasing over time. It's unbelievable the amount of solutions, opportunities, projects, and also ideas that are coming out of this. Because everyone see an opportunity of one specific technology, and you have more technologies coming in and more ideas on the same technology. So to make it become in place, it's the topic.
So let me ask the same question to both of you then, by way of sort of concluding our comments today. And I'll start with Jan Erik. We've heard some really good examples of the type of changing customer experience, how we can involve customers, and the sort of blueprint approach that we need. But actually, it's hard. Why are we doing this? What is the purpose of improving the customer experience? I mean, many customers will change insurers each year. So why are we doing it? Are we just trying to cut costs? Are we, what's the fundamental goal behind all this work?
Well, yeah, we in IF at least believe, and evidence also points out that the more satisfied claims customers you have, the better retention you have, and obviously that is adding a lot of value. We all know that acquiring new customers is always expensive. So if you can keep the ones that you have today, that's definitely beneficial. And I think that it's also, maybe it's not even only about the customers and the kind of making yourself profitable. I mean, of course, the efficiency side is important as well, but it's also to make sure you can attract people into this industry. I mean, have employees. I think that we really want to have the kind of the best experts in the market when it comes to the kind of the core insurance. But now with all this big data popping up and everything, it's really hard to even attract those traditional experts into our industry. And of course, if you are in the forefront, also delivering better tools, smoother customer experience, better analytics tools, that of course is kind of as a whole making ourselves more attractive. So I think that's an angle that we should also use in when we make the business cases for creating something fancy into the market.
Well, that's an interesting take. I must confess, Jan, I haven't heard that angle before, so that's really quite unique. And Mario, if I can put the same question to you, what do you see as the fundamental drivers of why Generali feels the need to invest and change in this whole area?
Well, there is the hard answer, which is the same as Jan Erik, but I would start with maybe the real answer why we believe, because that's in our purpose of an insurance company. So we are here to protect people. We are here to make their dreams happen. So it's the reason why we exist. That's why we have to invest and to work on the customer experience. Then, of course, there is the hard measurement of that, and it is about retention. It's measured also that better claims customer experience enables also retention. Of course, retention doesn't depend alone on a good claims customer experience. There are other factors such as pricing, external competition, so on. But it is true and measured that if you have a bad customer experience, you're more willing to leave the company. Okay. There is also the efficiency side, because also investing in customer experience, it's not only a win situation for the customer, but also for the company, because we can be more efficient. I mean, if customers are if they don't need to call us all the time to understand where the claim is, Of course, I'm sure the customer will be happier, and will have to manage less calls and so it's a win-win situation if you're able to have a faster experience for everyone. And then there is maybe a soft side on that, which is about building trust and reputation to the different stakeholders. So if a customer who doesn't have a claim knows that there is a good claims experience being delivered by the insurance company, of course, that has a positive effect also in retention, also in business development. So the reputational and trust effect that we can create by having a good claims customer experience will have its financial effect, I also believe.
Terrific. So in thanking you both, Mario and Jan-Erik, I'd just like to summarize what I've heard, which is 2 or 3 key points, which is that as we're redesigning the customer experience, we better make sure that we have the customer involved in what that new experience should be. It sounds obvious, but I think we've all seen a lot of great ideas coming out of technology companies and coming out of insurers, which actually customers are not buying into. The classic being the number of apps that were available for download a few years ago, which even if they were downloaded, never actually got used. And it seemed like a good idea at the time, but what was clearly happening is that no one was listening to customers. And the second thing that has come out of today, it seems to me, is that internally we need to bring together those multidisciplinary teams and or bring in the external experts right from the beginning so that the IT can understand the claims focus, the claims can understand the IT focus, and both of them can understand the customer focus that's necessary. Because without that starting point, that multiple starting point, we will end up with solutions that don't fit one or other parties. And finally, just picking up on what Jan-Erik has focused on, which is the need for agile working. I think in the new world of redesigning customer experience and trying to keep pace with customer demands, we as insurers and indeed their suppliers have to be ready to take perhaps smaller steps, but certainly more quickly. But even the larger steps now have to be taken within timescales that are unheard of in the traditional insurance manner of working. So to Mario and Jan-Erik, I'm just going to hand over to Graham now, but I have to say that's been an absolutely fantastic insight to the work that you have been doing. I know our listeners will have been delighted. So thank you very, very, very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. And again, Mario, Jan-Erik, thank you for your insights. It's been a fantastic webinar. I think what I've got out of it mostly is that point around thought leadership with technology and being aware of what is available combined with claims experience is so valuable. And that's why senior claims management teams that have those individuals with knowledge in both areas are really making the big strides forwards. I'm sure that's why you've both found success within your insurance companies. With that in mind, I'd just like to remind the listeners that we are running the Connected Claims Europe seminar on the 18th and 19th of September in Amsterdam. Do check it out. Google Insurance Nexus /Connected Claims Europe for more information. And also feel free to reach out to myself, Graham Proud, on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to talk to you about what we're doing there. Also, do check out Eddie Longworth on LinkedIn. He's still very active in the field of claims and is always looking to speak to insurers too about their problems. And we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar and hopefully on site in Amsterdam later in the year. So thank you everybody once again, and we'll see you soon.